with documentation, and they may be on the hook for what they can't explain. At a minimum, they are likely going to need to return about $500,000 that was left as their bank balance at the end of the last election cycle. But ultimately, it's up to the campaign finance board members to decide on penalties. And while it is extremely rare, the board has withheld public matching money from candidates before. But the board's going to be under a lot of pressure. They have to make a call before the end of the year. The first payment of public matching funds for the upcoming election cycle is due in December. And remember, the primary is right around the corner in next June.
I'm wondering, Bridget, what kind of reaction we're getting and what you're hearing.
So a lawyer for the Adams campaign who I spoke to while reporting this story pointed out that, they had a huge number of transactions. They raised a ton of money, and that lawyers said some of this is inevitable. It's a result of an unintentional margin of error, but that they followed the law and that they're going to respond to the audit as needed. The deadline's at the end of the month, and so that they will get it in when it is due. This is, I'll note, with an extension that the Campaign Finance Board gave them. But there have been calls to tighten up the law that governs the campaign finance system. There is council legislation that would allow the CFB to withhold money from candidates that don't respond to their information requests earlier in the process. And some of Adams' potential primary challengers are taking some shots at him. Former City Controller Scott Stringer says he thinks the kind of lack of attention to detail that's evident in this draft audit is similar to what he sees and how Adams runs City Hall.
There's no ability to focus attention on the details of campaign public expenditure and the details of government. And it's wrong, and it should not be accepted. And what I think is happening internally is this government is slowly collapsing.
Michael, a spokesman for the mayor, dismissed that criticism. I'll note that I also reached out to City Controller Brad Lander, who jumped in the race this week, and State Senator Zellner Myrie for their reactions. Both declined to comment.
WNYC's Bridget Bergen on the Campaign Finance Board's preliminary audit here. Thank you, Bridget.
Thanks, Michael.
WNYC supporters include Bosch e-bike systems, available in over 100 e-bike brands worldwide. Bosch connected systems provide a constantly updated biking experience. More information is available at local bike dealers and at ebike.com. Sponsoring WNYC means reaching hundreds of thousands of engaged and discerning listeners who've made our shows part of their daily routine. Find more on sharing your business message with WNYC's unique audience at wnyc.org/sponsorship.
Marketplace Morning Report is coming up next, and then in 10 minutes at 9 o'clock, it's the BBC NewsHour on WNYC. Let's check in with London and see what they're working on. Hello, London.
Good morning, WNYC. I'm James Menendez. Today on NewsHour, the Israeli military says it's confirmed that Hamas's military chief in Gaza was killed in an airstrike last month. We'll assess the evidence and the significance. Also, the Pentagon says 3 men accused of plotting the 9/11 attacks will plead guilty in return for avoiding the death penalty. That's BBC NewsHour at 9 on WNYC.
82 and sunny out there right now. We are warming up today. Sunny and 93 for a high, but feeling hotter than that in the city at 96, and then even hotter in northern New Jersey. A heat advisory till Friday night.
Interest rates are falling even if central bankers choose not to hit the switch yesterday.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business, focused on offering smart business buying solutions, leaving time to focus on growth. More at amazonbusiness.com.
I'm David Brancaccio. First, tomorrow's the big hiring and unemployment reports for the month just ended. At yesterday's Federal Reserve briefing, it went according to expectations, with a strong hint rates will go down in September. Here's Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell says it won't be appropriate to cut interest rates until officials are more confident that inflation is moving sustainably toward the Fed's 2% goal. But some ex-Fed officials, like the former president of the New York Fed, think the central bank is risking a recession by keeping rates high. Powell told me it's a delicate balancing act. If the Fed lowers rates too soon, it could reignite inflation.
So I think it's a difficult judgment to make, and what you see is the judgment of the committee is that time is drawing near. That time could be in September if the data support that.
As it weighs a September rate cut, Powell says the Fed is ready to respond if the economy wobbles or unemployment bumps up rapidly.
If we are to respond to weakness, we're certainly well equipped to do that. But that's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is strong economic activity and good labor market and inflation coming down.
The Fed does have a dual mandate, battling inflation down to 2%, but also maximizing employment, getting as many people working as possible. In its statement yesterday, the Fed said it's, quote, attentive to the risks to both sides of its mandate. I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer for Marketplace.
All of this leaves market interest rates lower in anticipation. The 10-year interest rate now at 4.02%, and soon you'll start hearing the likes of me talk about rates moving below the 4% mark. That would be for the first time since February. S&P and NASDAQ futures are both up about 0.4%. Shareholders have sued CrowdStrike, the computer security firm that put out a faulty software update almost 2 weeks ago that froze about 9 million Windows computers. Shareholders are seeking class action status after CrowdStrike's stock price dropped in the days that followed, wiping out about $25 billion in stock market value. Government offices, hospitals, schools, and businesses around the world were affected, especially Delta Airlines and Delta passengers. Separately, Delta has reportedly moved to seek damages from CrowdStrike.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by OneStream, the enterprise finance platform that unifies financial and operational data using the power of AI, helping businesses forecast faster and more accurately at onestream.com.
This new month here marks 2 years since President Biden signed the CHIPS and Science Law, the sweeping law to build semiconductor factories in the U.S., reshore critical production, and more. 1 week later also marks 2 years since the signing of the big clean energy and climate legislation. Let's get an update now from Heather Boucher, a member of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, who's also chief economist in Biden's Invest in America cabinet. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
These giant programs, 2 years later, people would expect that they're implemented, that their provisions are out in the world doing their thing. Would you say that is the case?
Well, there is so much evidence that a lot has been implemented. We've now seen announcements of $900 billion of private sector investment all across the country. So in new biotechnologies, in chips factories across the country, in clean energy. But those are just announcements. What we've actually also seen, which is just as, if not more exciting to the economist in me, is that we've seen that has been followed up by record-breaking investments in the construction of new manufacturing structures all across the country. So we're actually seeing shovels in the ground, investment happening. And I've had the fortune of being able to travel to many of these places across the country and to see these investments in action.
I had seen that figure put out by the White House, $900 billion in private sector investment, and was curious. I mean, has it led to actual jobs? But if you said there are shovels in the ground, that means someone's holding the shovel.
Certainly, we're actually seeing record numbers of people employed in construction. And our internal estimates are that it takes about 6 to 8 quarters for the manufacturing jobs to show up. So now that we've seen 6 quarters of that new investment, we expect those manufacturing jobs to start showing up in these new facilities. And of course, we saw a very sharp uptick in manufacturing, as we started to recover from the pandemic. And under the president and vice president's watch, we've seen 800,000 manufacturing jobs created.
And this has been part of your job, too, is making the case for the changes the administration has been trying to carry out. You must feel sometimes that it's been rolling a rock uphill, that people aren't feeling what it is your statistics are showing.
David, this is one of the things that gets me. I look at the national statistics and I see an economy that recovered faster from a deep recession than any recovery in my professional career in decades. And yet we've seen, some frustration with the economy in the national media. And here's the thing that I've seen as I've traveled the country. The people that I'm meeting with are so excited about the investments in their communities because of the Invest in America agenda. They're able to improve their airport, which means economic growth for their communities. They've been able to make investments in clean energy. So what I've been seeing as I've been talking to people is that real palpable sense of excitement and also an understanding of all the hard work that is in front of these communities to really make the most of this opportunity.
Forecasts are for there to be more names on payrolls yet again when the July data comes out on Friday, but not as many jobs created as a month earlier. The job market isn't as strong as it was. Are you okay with that in the fight against inflation?
Well, listen, this has been an historic jobs recovery. We saw jobs come back faster than any previous recovery, faster than expected. And we always knew, and in fact, the president, put out an op-ed a number of years ago about how as the recovery started to stabilize, we would see the pace of jobs come back down to a sustainable pace. And that's exactly what we've seen.
Heather Boucher is on the President's Council of Economic Advisors. She's also chief economist of the Biden administration's Investing in America cabinet. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And how a mood swing can add hundreds of millions in paper value to a company. Last week, artificial intelligence was in the doghouse. Yesterday, it was back as the wave of the future. This pushed up the price of AI chipmaker NVIDIA so sharply, it added $330 billion in stock market value. That's said to be the biggest one-day jump in history, like grafting on the value of all of Bank of America. I'm David Brancaccio. This is the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.